finishing stirring up some of my resin here that I've mixed up. So I'm just going to be doing this for just about another minute, and then I'm going to be pouring it into my other cups that I have right here so that I can mix the colors in. I've already leveled my surface and finished my outside lines on my geode here that I did with mortar, and then I painted them, and then I did a dry brushing technique on top with some white just to give it a little bit of texture. Yeah, this resin is just about all mixed up here. I'm trying to stay in the video, but I want to be able to make it so you guys can see. So you'll probably just see the bottom half of my body most of the time. Okay, it's looking pretty good. It's a little bit cold outside today. I've got my little heater on in my room, trying to make it a little bit warmer in here. You want it to be about, I think it's 70 degrees or something that you want it to be in your space in order for your resin to not be super bubbly. You need it warm enough that the bubbles are going to pop, rise to the surface and pop on their own. I mean, you use your heat gun to pop bubbles or a torch to pop bubbles, but other bubbles that don't get popped should rise on their own and pop on their own. So you shouldn't have to worry about it too much. Okay, that's done there. I'm just going to put my stir sticks. See, I just get these from the dollar store. Just a package of 3 for $1. So I just buy those, and then that's what I use to stir. And today I'm stirring up my thing in an old resin container that I cleaned out. I don't like wasting anything. So what I've already gone ahead and done is I actually put a second coat of white paint just around the outside line here where I want my white to be, just because I really wanted it to be a brighter white in that section. And yeah, so I'm just going to get started mixing up my colors, and I'll show you how I do that here in just a second. So I'm just going to take my cup and I'm going to pour my mixed resin in, and it's going to be about that much in that one. And then I'm doing some white, so I'm going to pour some white in this one. Okay. And then I know I'm doing my dark gray. A little bit in that one. I know I'm not using as much dark gray. I think that's my lighter gray that I'm going to be doing here. And then I'm actually going to mix up a tiny bit just in this container right here. And I might add a little bit of sparkle or something like that to it, just to give it a little bit more of a change, because the way that I did this, I have my white, then my light gray, then my dark gray, then some clear to let it blend. Then I have white, then I go back to my light gray. And I was just thinking that it might look a little bit too simple. So, I mean, they're going to put a little bit of like black glitter or something kind of iridescent in here just to give it a little bit more sparkle, because there's nothing wrong with more sparkle. And especially because of this piece being so large, I'm able to actually handle it. This one here is a 25 inch by 40 at 9 inch wide piece. So this is quite a large painting that I'm working on here. And I custom cut all of it myself, and then did everything with a jigsaw and drew out the design. And I'm just going to get started mixing that up, and yeah, then we'll get started. So I'm just going to do my dark gray first. So I'm just going in with a bit of this Liquitex black acrylic paint, and I just put a couple of drops in. You can see there's just a couple drops, because I know that I want this to be a darker gray color. I'm actually going to use a little bit. The lid is broken on my cup here. So what I'm going to do is, since my lid is broken on my white paint, instead of squirting it out, I'm just going to scrape a little bit onto this popsicle stick. And I'm going to add a bit of white into my black, and I'm just going to give that a stir. Gotta stir it in really good, especially when you're using paint and not pigments. Pigments for resin mix in really, really easily, whereas paint, it's a little stickier and it doesn't mix as well. So you might end up with chunks of paint in here that aren't fully mixed if you aren't careful. So I can tell now when I mixed it up that it's nice and thin, so it's warmed up to the right temperature in here. And the color itself is all mixed in, so there's no streaks of white where I put my white paint, and it's a beautiful dark gray color right now. I'm actually gonna do is I'm just gonna add a tiny bit of this pigment that I have from soap making. And I'm just gonna add a little bit of that. It just has a little bit of an iridescent shine to it. Glisten to it now, so that one I'm super happy with. Now I'm moving on to my light gray, and I've actually got some just craft paint right here, Martha Stewart craft paint, and the color is wet cement. So I'm actually gonna mix quite a bit of this paint in, because these paints are a little bit more liquid than like a artist paint, I guess you'd call it, like the Liquitex acrylic paint. These ones are for crafts, so they're a little bit less pigmented. So you need a little bit more of the paint to mix in. But I know that I'm gonna want this color a little bit darker. I don't think it's quite the color that I'm looking for. I would like it to be a little bit darker. So I'm just gonna do the same thing that I did with my other popsicle stick, and I'm just gonna scrape just the tiniest bit of black onto the tip of it. And I'm gonna add it in to my wet cement, so you can see now that it's mixing together. So that because I want a lighter gray color. With this one, I'm actually going to mix in a bunch of silver paint or silver pigment in. I really would like this lighter color to be really glistening and beautiful. I didn't want silver on its own. See, it's a lighter gray color. And then for my white, I'm going to be going in with, of course I can't open it because my hands are covered in resin. I'm going to be going in with this pigment from, I get this one from DIY Counterculture DIY. And it's epoxy resin, it's Armor Art epoxy pigment in white. Just lost the sealant on it. And this stuff is really, really thick, so it's hard to get out sometimes. I'm actually gonna take the little cap and I gotta fish this out here. Okay, I'm fishing the lid sealer out because it just ended up inside my thing because I'm a klutz and everything I do, I end up making a mess. So here we go. Get in there, white. As you can see, it's super thick, so you hardly need any at all. I'm gonna put my lid back on, take my stir stick, and I'm gonna stir in that white till it's nice and mixed in. Some beautiful, beautiful white, and I really, really like using that white when I'm doing ocean pieces. Just the thickness and heaviness of it, it actually just makes beautiful, beautiful waves in an ocean piece. Probably need a little bit more resin in this one, and I know that I'm going to be mixing up quite a bit of white and actually quite a bit of the grays, but I'm going to show you what I do with the clear that really, really makes these that much nicer. I'll show you in a minute. Here we go. So I'm just gonna free pour it in a slight design that it should go in right here. I'm just kind of following along my lines. And this is where it's super helpful to have those lines pre-drawn on, because then you know exactly where you're pouring and where you want it to flow. So it just makes everything really easy for you. So I'm going in with this gray first, and I'm kind of just following along outside line of where I want this color to be, and then from there I'll probably go back in and add a little bit more. I have a couple little tricks that I like to do to really, really give these colors a kind of a bit more of a 3D look, because that's what rock is. It's not just flat, it's got a ton of character. So as you can see, that was my light gray all mixed up and put on right there. And I'm just gonna let that sit for just a second. while I think about what I'm doing and putting my dark gray in next. So I'm just gonna give it an extra little stir here with the dark gray. And I'm just gonna go in with my popsicle stick, drawing around that outside edge of where I want my dark gray to be. Just this way is kind of like giving it an outline so I know where I'm going. And I'm gonna start from the bottom side over here and then meet up in the middle. That way I don't carry drips all the way across, and then I can actually just bring my popsicle stick in between my two panels, so that way I don't actually touch anything. As you can see, I already dripped right here. So I'm just gonna grab a cloth, and I'm just gonna wipe that off because I don't want gray over here. So I'm just gonna go back again with my popsicle stick, adding a little bit more of the dark gray color. And this is where I was saying before that with geodes, you really don't need a ton of lines. I find that that's almost a mistake that I've made before, is just doing too much on a piece, doing too many layers. You really don't need it, because when you go back in to do all of your line work at the end, you're gonna find that it adds so much detailing just doing the line work at the end that sometimes I'll actually look at a piece and not like it while I'm making it, just find that it looks too plain. But really it's perfect. It just needs to be lined at the end. That's where you're gonna do with like a paint pen and do your veining inside at the end. So now that I kind of have an idea drawn out here, I'm just gonna lightly pour some of this dark gray into the sections that don't have any paint. And what that's gonna do is just fill in between my lines of my outline that I did, just so that I have a nice clear design right there. So you can see the dark gray looks really beautiful with this light gray. This color scheme is gonna look really gorgeous. So then again, I'm gonna come up here and do my dark gray on this side, on the outside edge, and do the exact same thing like I was doing before, where I pour it on the inside, pour it on the outside. Fill it in after. add a little section of some really dark color. Just felt like the light gray and dark gray was just not quite enough contrast. So I actually mixed up some black just to give it a little bit more intrigue over here. Just think that it lines it a little nicer along those spots there. I'm actually going to go in with a nice section of the dark right along the edge of this white over here. And I need it over here. So bring my black all the way around here and lean it up. Carry some of the dark through here. That I have really long arms. When I use my heat gun, I'm going to blend all of this in. Just didn't really like how it was looking in that one section. But I'm now just going to take a bit of clear here, apply it to the edge of that black, just to rough up its edges a bit. Mixing one, because now that I'm done mixing color, I'm just going to use my spatula to kind of scrape around the color a little bit, fill it in a little bit. Any little spots that are kind of missing in the resin. There's just one more kind of right here that I really would like to fill in. While I'm grabbing some of the white that it's got. Just a little bit of clear right along the edge of my painting. Right here. I just like the way that it looks when I go to apply my crystals, that there's a clear section here. It just looks really pretty. Kind of gives it depth instead of it just being one solid color. Pouring some clear here. A lot of the stuff that I do isn't like a you have to do it this way sort of thing. This is just what I like to do. Let's add a little bit of clear around here. So you'll see that, like, that was easy, right? Like, there wasn't a lot to that. That was just planning out a design, pouring it on, and letting it just go wherever it wants, right? Like, I haven't done anything special here. I haven't spent 2 hours. This has been about 15 minutes. Maybe 20, I don't know. Time sort of flies when I'm doing this, maybe because I'm having fun. Okay, so I'm gonna take my gloves off now. I'm totally done with these for now. Now I'm going to take, this is what I use for my sparkles. So it is vase filler that I get from Michael's. And Actually, I already have a container open right here, so I'm gonna use the one that's already open, not this one. They have them in a different color too. I bought them in this silver gray color as well. I actually don't like these ones. The back sides of them have like, I don't know if you can see, the back sides of them kind of have a bit of paper on them. And I don't like that. These ones here are a little bit more of a champagne-y color. But when they're poured on, they kind of take on whatever color that's underneath. So I'm just going to pour them on to the edge along my design right here. And like where we had done gluing the crystals onto the edge of the painting, that crystal edge is going to help hold these guys in. Some of them will fall off. You're going to find that some of them fall off and end up in drips at the bottom, but that's just the nature of the beast. I actually have a second one. I like to take the bigger ones out a lot of the times and do the bigger sections I like to put on the edge instead of the little tiny pieces. So a lot of times I'm left with all the tiny pieces, which I actually like to pour the smaller bits anyway. I don't like them to be that big. I just like them like this. It's okay if some of them fall off. You'll probably get a bunch that fall off when you're done that haven't stuck to anything, but there. So I just loaded it full of those crystals so that inside line has so much and it's so sparkly. And then what I'm going to do, and now this is something that most people don't do, I'm sure, because it's not a typical way of doing this, but so this is my alcohol ink. I like to go back in since we want some gold added to this piece. Clean it up. So I'm gonna go back in with a bit of gold on this piece. So normally I wouldn't mix this with resin. What I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna take my popsicle stick. I'm just gonna get kind of dipped in. And then I'm just gonna come along and drip it. Don't use much, it takes hardly any. And I'm going to drip it along the outside edge of this white that I've got here. Sometimes I'll put it right up against the crystals. I'm not doing that this time. I really, really like putting the alcohol ink on the surface like this. It spreads out so naturally, and I don't mix it with the resin, I just drip it on top. I just sort of touch the surface of the resin with it. You can get a really, really cool look with this if you were to drip it just on the edge of the crystals. It'll float around them and not really sit on top of them. Sometimes if you want gold crystals, you could just put alcohol ink right on top of the gold crystals, or on top of the clear crystals, it'll turn them gold. But you'll still get a bit of shine through them, which is really cool. But yeah, if you put them just kind of on the outside edge of the crystals, you'll get a really cool look where it flows out from away, or out and away from them. I don't want to do that with this one. That's not what my client wanted. A little bit is fine. If you mess up a little bit, there is no rules when it comes to doing a geode. I'm going to add a bit more gold over here because I want it to look like it's coming out from over here. A little less defined. Same thing on this side. I'm actually going to bring it out in this section a little. And you could do this around the outside edge if you want. I'm not going to do that right now because I'm going to use my gold pens later to do that when I'm doing my line work. And plus alcohol ink is really expensive, so I try not to use too much of it. I've had that one for about a year though, so I've been using it on a lot of projects and still haven't run out. So now I'm going to grab my heat gun and I'm just going to run it over top of the surface, and then I'll bring you guys over and show you a close-up of kind of how messy it looks. Like, it doesn't look perfect. I will show you. making sure I don't see any heavy spots of black. And I think it looks fantastic. Everything is looking exactly the way I want it to. And yeah, I'm so super happy. So, okay, I'm just gonna bring you, people, anybody watching, if there's anybody even watching, I'm just gonna bring you over and I'm gonna let you look. See, I don't even know where to look on this thing. I'm gonna let you look at my painting from over here so you can see it's nice and shiny and the resin is there, but it's not perfect. Like, look at it. There's lines, there's all sorts of stuff. All of this is going to get hidden when you go to do your line work. You will be amazed at how different it looks once you put some line work in. There you go. So it's going to be beautiful. Bye-bye.